Hello and welcome to another episode of Scott Reads Comics. Today I'll be covering Spider-Man and Daredevil Special Edition, published in 1984 by Marvel Comics. The cover gives away the game a bit here, as does the back cover, as we have awesome Frank Miller artwork. And indeed, the reason for this special edition is so Marvel could represent a couple of Frank Miller's earliest efforts for them. Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man, issues 26 and 27. And by this time, when this is published, Miller is a bona fide star. He has yet to do Dark Knight, but his incredible run on Daredevil has pretty much wrapped up. And the issues, as in his introduction, Jim Salicrup explains, are hard to come by. So they decided, with Frank Miller's blessing, to reprint them. And in fact, Miller did have some input in addition to the covers. He also threw in some ideas about the actual look and structure of this. The paper, Jim Salicrup mentioned. So, of course, it's on this wonderful Baxter paper. And since this represents very early Frank Miller work, he's being inked by Frank Springer here. And I think Springer's inks in some cases are going to overwhelm the Miller's pencils. But the marks, the style, the layout are unmistakably Miller, and we're going to see that coming through, especially in issue 27, where it seems like Miller's confidence begins to grow from one issue to the next on this. And our creative crew is Bill Mantlo, writer, Frank Miller, guest penciler, Frank Springer, inker, Mary Jo Duffy, editor, and James Shooter, editor-in-chief. The Blind, Leading the Blind. What a great title. How apropos, because, of course, in issue 25, Spider-Man is blinded at the end by the Masked Marauder, the villain who will play out through these two issues. When Daredevil finds him cowering on a rooftop, he has to, of course, instruct Spider-Man, calm him, try and get him through this. For who better to do it than a blind superhero? Of course, no one knows Daredevil's blind. That's the whole point of the masquerade for him. And we get these incredible Miller panel designs here coming through the Frank Springer inks. It's not an unpleasing at all combination, even early on in Miller's career. And love the speed figures here showing Daredevil sort of getting around Spider-Man, trying to calm him down. One thing Salicrup points out is they had to do this special edition with a flashback sequence that would fill people in on what happened at the end of issue 25. And that sequence could not be drawn by Miller because he was just unavailable. So they brought in Mark Bright, a young Mark Bright, and Vince Colletta at this point. And this is part of that flashback sequence that they do. So it's cool. And you can almost see they're kind of trying to mimic what Miller's style would have been like, even though, of course, the flashback sequence would have been drawn by another artist, or these events, I should say, would have been drawn by another artist in issue 25, because Miller didn't do 25. But it gives us the story of what happens. Here's the consequential blast that renders Spider-Man blind. And the Tri-Man is the other villain. He never speaks. He's sort of an android who has some pretty incredible powers. He can literally transform himself into a humanoid, a bird droid, and what's called a bomb droid. So kind of like Nitro, that Captain Marvel villain. He can literally explode and reform. So very crazy. Here we see a bit of Spider-Man's angst. Are you crazy, DD? Didn't you hear what I told you? I'm blind, helpless, of no use to anyone. The Amazing Spider-Man is finished. I can hear his heart racing. Here it comes, the crack up. So at several points during this story, Spider-Man loses it. And who wouldn't, being suddenly rendered blind? Of course, again, as a young man, Daredevil went through this, so he knows Spider-Man's pain. Who better than Daredevil? As Daredevil's hypersensitive fingertips read the yellow pages, his mind races back. Look out! To that day, many years ago, the day of the accident. Robbed of his sight by a blow from a metal canister bearing radioactive materials, young Matt Murdock found his other senses mysteriously heightened. Making use of his newfound power and agility, Matt avenged the murder of his father and embarked upon a dual career as a talented lawyer, and that as a costumed adventurer called Daredevil, the man without fear. And again, we can see the the trademark Miller marks, the line work, the layout. It's all coming through here. The curiously named Dr. Orlock will be the optometrist that Daredevil takes Spider-Man to see if anything can be done about his blindness. We have a bit of a side plot here between Betty Brant, Mary Jane Watson, both after Peter Parker's heart. And I think at this point, Parker is with Betty Brant, and MJ is kind of on the side, but they agree to be friends over it. And Mrs. Muggins, Spider-Man's nosy and curmudgeonly landlady, notices his apartment door is open and sounds had been coming from it, even though Parker's not there. She goes in, and here we run into the significant subplot of these two issues and witnesses a scene of mindless carnage, destruction, and terror. Trademarks all the malevolent carrion. Soon, Parker, you must return, and I will be waiting. And treading thin air, the cadaverous villain departs. So who is Carrion? Well, he doesn't appear a ton in Spider-Man stories. Not like someone like Electro, Dr. Octopus, Kraven, characters who show up over and over. He has a significant connection to Gwen Stacy and to probably one of the most gut-wrenching moments in Spider-Man's career. And we'll see a little bit of that play out here. So many hours later, they show up at Dr. Orlock's office. He examines Spider-Man and is inconclusive of whether his vision can be restored or not. The Marauders got the entire Magia behind him. He wouldn't need cash unless he was planning something big, something terrifying, and there's not a blasted thing I can do to stop him. Spider-Man, take it easy. You're not alone, fella. We're in this together. Trust me, man, trust me. So Spider-Man finally recovers himself. They go up on a rooftop. Love the sort of trademark New York rooftop scene here. Awesomely rendered by Miller and inker Frank Springer. And Daredevil convinces Spider-Man to help him, learns about Spider-Man's spider sense. It's interesting, too. Spider-Man almost reveals his secret identity to Daredevil, but decides better of it. But the two of them are resolved to work together to stop the Masked Marauder and the Tri-Man. Picking anything up yet? Not yet. Wait. Yes, this direction. Where? You're heading towards Midtown, near 6th Avenue. Can't let on that my radar senses have also picked up his tracker. Mustn't undermine his reviving confidence. So again, we get some fantastic action of our heroes in motion, going from rooftop to rooftop. I love the squiggle lines here for Spider-Man, Spider Sense, really cool. And at this time, I don't think Frank Miller has nailed the Daredevil assignment, but this issue and the following one had to do it for Jim Shooter, because who has ever drawn Daredevil like this up to this point? Amazing illustration of Daredevil, his radar sense, and this is all Frank Miller like interpreting Daredevil's powers. Just great. And I love the colors in this Baxter edition too. I almost wish I did have the regular issues side by side so we could compare them, because I don't think they're going to look like this. Okay, my job's done. Go get him, DD. I wouldn't be much use in a fight. Drop the sob sister routine, fella. I've said this before, I'll say it again. We're in this together. So meanwhile, the Masked Marauder is in the process of extorting the very city of New York itself from Mayor Ed Koch. So great, Marvel stories, all grounded in reality. Even as crazy or outlandish as they become, they still have that verisimilitude that the setting and the real world stuff can provide. Love this panel of the destruction that the mass marauder is promising if his demands aren't met. He's going to make the man into a living nuclear bomb. And he's going to blow up all Manhattan unless it's turned over to him. I think probably the Avengers and the Fantastic Four would also have something to say about that. But hey, it's a big city. They're off solving other problems. So this one's up to Daredevil and Spider-Man. And they burst in just as he's describing his plot to Ed Koch. That's what I like about you, Marauder. You aim for the skies. Daredevil, here? Sure. Did you expect me to stay away once I learned from Spider-Man that you were up to your old tricks? I'm shocked we know each other better than that. Too well, you crimson cretin. It will give me great pleasure to destroy you in the same instant that I cremate the city of New York. Oh, man. This guy really lays it on thick. As the Tri-Man transforms into his robotic bird form, he careens, smashing out the window, carrying Spider-Man with him with a crash. And this is just a great panel to end this first issue on, this issue 26. High over a doomed city, Spider-Man begins a slow, spiraling fall to his death. Next, ashes to ashes. But before we get to that next issue, we get two great reproductions of our covers, 27 and 28. I think I said 26 and 27 earlier, but it's actually Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man 27 and 28. And a great Dave Cockrum cover. Man, could Dave Cockrum do a cover. And then here we have a nice cover from Keith Pollard and Al Milgrom for the second issue. Funny that, of course, giving away the game here, Carrion's going to show up big time at the end of this issue, but he makes the cover rather than the climactic battle with Mass Marauder and Tri-Man. So that's an interesting decision that was made. And then a really nice treat, they give us some other early Frank Miller Marvel work, some covers that they gave him. So Jim Shooter must have really trusted Frank Miller to give him covers this soon in his career. He could see the genius in his design sense, and we can see it too here. This great Marvel premiere featuring the Falcon, Marvel Spotlight on Captain Marvel, two of these, really cool. This Marvel Spotlight on Dragon Lord. I love the non-superhero stuff Miller does. And then a sort of a sci-fi superhero mashup Star-Lord cover here. And on to issue 28, Ashes to Ashes. So we see Spider-Man's carried out the window, and he manages to snare the bomb droid. Combination of good hearing and spider sense guided my shot. I've snagged the bird droid, but it's taking me with it. Meanwhile, Daredevil carries on the fight, and they're about to shoot him with a makeshift firing squad. And again, we see Miller's incredible design sense here, showing Daredevil in motion. He directs their fire exactly where he wants it to go. Got to time this perfectly. Catch them by surprise. Get them to follow my leap. So they rake the wall behind me with their rifle fire, so that it's almost impossible for them to miss the conduit box which controls the penthouse's lights. The entire floor is instantaneously plunged into utter darkness. Enveloped in shadow, guided by his uncanny radar senses, the sightless man without fear is right at home in the element he knows best. And again, folks had to see this in Marvel editorial and say, yes, we have got to put Frank Miller on Daredevil. And it wouldn't be long before he was on Daredevil. That's the last of your flunkies, Marauder. Daredevil's mask must be equipped, as mine is, with infrared lenses enabling him to see the dark. But if he thinks me blind, helpless, at his mercy, how little he has learned of my power over the years. So he blasts Daredevil with his optoblasts. While heading northward through the night sky, enshrouded above 6th Avenue. Don't know how high up we are. I've got to reel myself in. So Spider-Man's using a combination of his spider sense and his other remaining senses that are strangely heightened by the absence of his vision, and trying to find a way to disable this bomb. Meanwhile, Daredevil and the Masked Marauder continue to struggle. Daredevil's weakened. It worked. He dropped the bomb droid's control box now to... Careless, DD. You let the Marauder catch you off guard. You interfering, insufferable idiot. I've borne the final indignity from you, Daredevil. Once I press this button, the bomb droid will be armed and set to explode upon impact. Nothing can stop it. Nothing. Farnham, don't be a fool. But the Marauder merely laughs shrilly. So you might think, is the Marauder suicidal? No, he's not. Earlier in this story, it was hinted that they have a teleportation device that's going to instantly take them out of Manhattan before they level it. Meanwhile, the bird droid's doing a nosedive. I've got to hang on and get to the power source before the inevitable happens. Yahoo! I did something. Incredible panel here, too. Again, Miller, I feel like, has asserted himself more in this issue versus the previous one. And we see the Masked Marauder's device fails, and Daredevil knocks him out. His every sense screaming anguish, Daredevil radar scans the Manhattan skyline. There, something flying erratically towards Central Park. It must be the bomb droid, and it's losing altitude fast. So Spider-Man somehow guides the bomb droid to a dramatic but relatively safe landing. The smell of trees, grass, things I've never noticed before. That means I did it. Down the bomb droid in Central Park. The danger is past. Freeze, wall crawler. No sudden moves, web slinger. A billy club, that must mean that Daredevil is here. Please holster your guns and back away from Spider-Man, officers. I'm taking him out of here. But we got reports he was terrorizing Midtown. I don't have the time or inclination to argue. Wait till you hear from your superiors. They're probably trying to contact you now. So Daredevil offers Spider-Man a hand up, and Spider-Man can see him for the first time since this story began. Suddenly realizes that he sees Daredevil's proffered hand. Web slinger? Spider-Man's eyesight is returning. So, pretty cool wrap up to this particular arc of the story. And meanwhile, back at Peter's apartment, his supporting cast has gathered with the police to figure out why Peter hasn't been seen for a couple of days and discern who trashed his apartment. MJ, you haven't seen Pete? Not really, not since we broke up, Flash. But who could hate Peter enough to do this? And then Pete is outside of his apartment looking in, and his guise, of course, is Spider-Man. He snags some clothes, quickly changes to dodge detection, as he has so often done in his career. And he shows up with a pretty interesting excuse for why he's been off and why his eyes are so sensitive. Right, I hurt my eyes in a chem lab experiment. Poor Peter, why don't you let me take care of you tonight? Betty, I think what the man needs is a rest, not recreation. You can crash at my place, Pete. I guess I can't stay here. Thanks, Hector. De nada, amigo. Meet you after my last class. So that's, I think, Hector Ayala, who is secretly the White Tiger. Hector gave me an out. Whoever ravaged my apartment might trace me to a friend's home. I couldn't risk involving others, but Hector's the White Tiger. He can take care of himself. But who is my mysterious housebreaker? Was he after Peter Parker, like D'Angelo said? Or has some madman discovered my secret identity? So, Hector has been knocked out and used to deliver a message as Peter gets to his apartment. And we see a brief but pretty violent altercation between Parker and Carrion. Carrion, who I always thought was a pretty visually stunning villain. Pretty amazingly rendered here by Miller. And it's rare, we don't get to see it a lot, but Peter Parker fighting, using all of his spider powers without the Spider-Man costume. Really cool. Since you know who I am, it seems silly to go on pulling my punches. Your spider strength is useless against me, Parker. For I command absolute dominion over all that lives, or once lived. All organic matter turns to ash at my touch, to dust. As if to prove Carrion's claim, the oaken table crumbles. But your demise will not come so easily. I wish you to suffer for all the months I have suffered because of you. There must be a full moon tonight. This Joker's a certified loony. Still, I've got to fight back. So he grabs Parker, and we have a pretty dramatic cliffhanger. Next, dust to dust. And really nice here. They didn't have to do this, but it's really cool. They give a basically a pretty thorough explanation as to who Carrion is, and it's not an easy explanation because there's a lot of continuity wrapped up in his identity. And turn the page, and we get this brilliant splash page or full page illustration from what I presume to be the next issue. I am violent murder, come back to haunt you. I am the dead, walking again. I am vengeance, hatred, your judge and your executioner. But who are you? At least tell me that, fool. Can it be that you still have not guessed the awesome truth? I am the living clone of Professor Miles Warren. So, pretty great. I love the inclusion of these little extras that make this kind of a complete package as just a double-sized Baxter book. And turning away from this, I have to linger for just a moment on the advertisement for the A-Team comic, which is a 3-issue limited series. The first one, written by Jim Salicrup, penciled by Marie Severin, inked by Chick Stone. I got to track that one down because I'm a huge Marie Severin fan. The second one, also written by Jim Salicrup, penciled by Jim Mooney, and inked by Joe Giella. And then the third one, written and penciled by Alan Kupperberg and inked by Brian Moore. So very cool. I bet these A-Team comics would be a lot of fun to read through on the show. So I might track them down. I will say, you don't see them in dollar bins very often, and I haven't looked for them on eBay, so I don't know how expensive or hard to get they are, but it might be fun. But in the meantime, what a joy it was to cover this, to go through it with you. Really cool to see this early Frank Miller artwork, his early Daredevil and Spider-Man work. Really nice. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. Tell your friends, and I'll bring you more soon on Scott Reads Comics. Thanks for watching.